Hello everyone, it's me, Maester Mike, and I'm back for my next Star Wars review. This time I'm reviewing the Revenge of the Sith, the final movie of the prequel trilogy, and the last one made by George Lucas himself. It's kind of sad, really. It's a bit of an end of an era. Hope you don't mind the change in scenery. It's nothing different. It's still my room, but just had to change it because the light will give a horrible lens flare to this camera. Whatever. So, Revenge of the Sith. This movie takes place a few years after the events of the Attack of the Clones. The Clone Wars are about to come to an end, but the tides are going to turn for the worse in the galaxy very soon. Anakin is starting to doubt the Jedi Order, and he's starting to see a lot of flaws in their belief system. While Palpatine is slowly setting his plan into motion to finally take over the Republic and destroy the Jedi once and for all, and will finally convince Anakin to fulfill his destiny and embrace the dark side, completing his arc into turning into Darth Vader. So, yeah, this movie is the last of the prequel trilogy, and while the prequel trilogy gets a lot of bad rap itself, this movie is really. I don't know how many people dislike this movie as they do with the Phantom Menace or the Attack of the Clones, but I feel like this movie gets a lot of bad rap just because it's part of the prequel trilogy. Because, in all honesty, I think this is the best movie. This is easily the best movie out of the prequel trilogy by far, and it's also one of my favorites. It's easily the most underrated Star Wars movies out there, and I think it can stand up toe to toe with all the originals itself. While it does definitely have a lot of flaws, I think they're not as bad as they were for the first two movies. And George Lucas really went out of his way to make this like the best one that he possibly could before eventually turning it over to Disney. Although wonder what would have happened had he done episodes 7, 8, and 9, whatever. So I have a little funny story for this. As I mentioned in my earlier videos, I got into Star Wars with the Attack of the Clones when that first came out to theaters. So I had a lot of movies to watch. I had the first three movies and Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So I had 5 movies to get into when I first started watching this. And then when I learned that this movie, Revenge of the Sith, wouldn't come out for another few years, I was devastated. This was probably the first time I ever really had to wait for something for a few years. The wait was long, but eventually came here, and I feel like I was going to like this movie anyway, regardless of what other people said. And it's kind of funny. It's almost 15 years after this movie has come out now. So, yeah. Those are old memories. Time sure does fly. So, anyway, back on subject. The Revenge of the Sith is a really strong movie from beginning to end, I think. It has a lot of great stuff going for it. First off, the first thing I really enjoy about the movie is the opening scene. The opening act is really awesome. It starts out with Anakin and Obi-Wan going to rescue Chancellor Palpatine, who had been kidnapped by the Separatist leaders Count Dooku and General Grievous, who was first introduced in the 2003 animated Clone Wars series by Genndy Tartakovsky, the guy who created Samurai Jack in Dexter's Laboratory. Yeah, and he's brought into this movie for his big screen debut. The whole scene first starts out with a space battle above Coruscant, and that scene is just fantastic. It's great. It's a lot of fun, and I feel like this movie has a lot better chemistry, especially in this scene, has much better chemistry between Anakin and Obi-Wan than it did in Attack of the Clones. They're mostly separate throughout most of that movie, but I feel like they have a lot of good stuff, despite Anakin's lackluster acting. The whole scene in that ship as they're trying to rescue Palpatine is just really fun. It is kind of weird. Some things I will say, it's kind of weird that they get rid of Count Dooku very soon. He gets killed off only like about 10 minutes into the movie. I feel like they kind of wasted him. They probably although they did use him more than the theatrical version of Return of the King did, where Christopher Lee is not in that movie at all. But yeah, this movie kind of wastes Christopher Lee's talent. He's only in for 5 minutes and then he's gone. And I do find it weird that they kind of introduced General Grievous out of nowhere, because if you hadn't seen the Clone Wars TV series, you'll probably be lost as to who this guy was. I didn't have much of a problem when I first saw it, but I feel like that may be something. But Grievous is a pretty cool character. He's this cybernetic creature that has these arms that can split apart, and he can wield 4 lightsabers at a time, which is pretty cool. Which is a really cool concept for him. I saw a clip of the Clone Wars show too, and I would like to see what more he could do, because he's only in this movie for about the first half. But the whole opening scene is just perfect. It's just fantastic. despite a little bit of despite some not so good acting from Anakin, it's still a great opening scene. Then after that, Anakin and Obi-Wan is a little bit of downtime in between that mission before Obi-Wan goes after General Grievous to hopefully capture him and end the Clone Wars for good. And after the next several minutes, it has Anakin starting to slowly doubt the Jedi more. I mean, he had some doubts about them in the Attack of the Clones, but here he's really starting to see through. He's getting pulled to the dark side more and more. For instance, I really like this stuff because some people think that Anakin's turn to the dark side is a little jarring, and while I can see that to some extent, I feel like it's done pretty well in this film. Like, he thinks that the Jedi are trying to take over the Republic. He also gets really angry that they put him on the council but don't promote him to the rank of Maester. They don't send him out on the mission to get General Grievous, and they also send him out to spy on Palpatine, which is treason. Not to mention that Anakin is also still married to Padme, and their forbidden relationship is going to take a turn for the worse when Padme reveals that she's pregnant with twins, although she doesn't say she's pregnant with twins until like the very end of the movie, but whatever. So Anakin has a lot to go through, and I really like seeing his slow pull to the dark side. Although yeah, Hayden Christensen's acting in this movie is not much better from the second movie. I think it has some moments, but I feel like he could do much better if he had been given a much better director to work with, and also a better script. But yeah, his acting is kind of weak, and his relationship with Padme, while I can understand some of it, yeah, it's also pretty flat. That dialogue between them is kind of cringy and stupid. But honestly, those are not. I feel like they're less pronounced in this movie than they are in the second one. There's also this one really cool scene between Anakin and Palpatine where Anakin he goes to this one like sort of opera thing. I don't know what it is. It's like some sort of show, some sort of like an opera in the Star Wars universe. And Palpatine is telling Anakin, like, he knows that, as he is obviously Darth Sidious and the one pulling the strings all this time, he knows that they're trying to spy on him. And so he tells Anakin this one story about some old Jedi, some old Sith master known as Darth Plagueis, and this story of how he once tried to use the dark side to help heal the ones that he loved. And it's a very unique story. A lot of the stories that they tell in the past these films are kind of more exposition to set up this current story, but this is like cool lore that helps explores the natures of the dark side. It's a tall tale, or technically it actually, according to Star Wars lore, it actually is real, and I believe that Palpatine was Darth Plagueis' apprentice that he mentions in the story. But that whole scene is really cool, and it really kind of makes the world feel more large and more mysterious. So this movie has like two halves. One has a more lighter side, where it's just the good guys, the Republic, and the clones trying to defeat the Separatists and General Grievous. The action scenes in these are really fun. I really like Obi-Wan fighting General Grievous. He has a lot of fun moments, and his fight with him is really awesome. But then, after the first half, Anakin discovers that Palpatine is secretly Darth Sidious all along, and he goes to report this to the Jedi, who want to take matters into their own hands. And there's also this really haunting scene that's really well done, where Anakin's alone in the abandoned Jedi temple, and he's pondering what he should do, and he's looking out across the Coruscant skyline, and then where Padme is also looking out in her skyline to the Jedi temple herself, and there's this really haunting track done by John Williams, of course, and the haunting track is just really great. It really makes you feel a mood, like the universe is about to change that night. That scene is really good. And eventually, once Anakin goes out to save Palpatine, he first we see this action scene where Palpatine reveals himself and slays several Jedi, and he gets into a brutal fight with Mace Windu, and he almost dies, but Anakin comes in at the last moments, and he has a snap decision where he just helps Palpatine just kill Mace Windu, when finally sealing Anakin's fate. He turns into Darth Vader then and there, and then the whole second half of this movie gets really dark. A little bit too much, maybe, but I think it's actually really well done. Once Palpatine orders the puts in Order 66 to the clones that we see all throughout the galaxy, every Jedi being routinely slaughtered by the clones, and that scene is also really good too. Even though even though you don't really know much about the Jedi in these movies, I always felt a really I always felt really sad seeing them die because of the death of the Jedi. You're supposed to love the Jedi, even though they're very stubborn and kind of strict and too blinded by their own rules and their own code. It's they're still they're still the saviors of the universe, and to see them being wiped out like they are in this one scene is just really like a big punch to the gut, especially with Williams' brilliant score. There's also the controversial scene where Anakin and the clones are attacking the Jedi Temple, and he goes up to the main council room and he's about to kill the younglings. Yeah, I feel that definitely is kind of a jarring scene where he's killing children. Yeah, I don't get too affected by it, but it is jarring for a lot of people. I feel like maybe if he was killing more adult Jedi, if he's killing older Jedi, it may have been a little bit more believable, but yeah, I feel like George Lucas put that in for shock value. And then after he does that, Anakin goes out to this planet Mustafar, this lava planet, to take out all the Separatist leaders, so that Palpatine can fully take control of the Republic once and for all. And he transforms it into the Empire. And really, the last act of this movie is just one of my favorites in all of film, and especially in Star Wars. Obi-Wan finally learns the truth of Anakin's tragic fall, and he has to go, unfortunately, stop his old friend. And what takes place, the duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan is hands down my favorite lightsaber duel in any of the Star Wars movies ever. The background of Mustafar, this lava planet, the lava erupting, that's just a perfect scenario for a final battle, and that scene has my favorite John Williams Star Wars score of all time. It's called the Battle of the Heroes, I think. It is just perfect. It really sets the mood for the battle. You really feel the connection between these two former friends having been torn apart by this brutal war. Now they were once friends and now they're enemies, and just sad. It's not really not really a fun, exciting fight like Duel of the Fates was from The Phantom Menace, which, funny enough, also plays in the scene, but it's a much more tragic and more dark and brooding song. And I really love the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. It goes on for just the right amount of time, and it just feels like the perfect way to wrap up this trilogy and set up the stakes for the original trilogy. And also during the scene, we have a fun battle between Yoda and Palpatine, which is kind of short, but it's also fun to see them fighting in the darn, what is that room in Coruscant? It's the interrogation room, the courtroom, whatever. It's the Senate room. I don't know what it's called, but that fight between Yoda and Palpatine is really good too, even if it is a little on the short side. This also gets really dark when Anakin, after he gets defeated, he loses all of his limbs, which is kind of sad. He loses all of his limbs. I feel like that was a little too dark and too brutal for him. And also he gets burned up and his body sets on fire and he just gets completely burnt up, and that's also pretty shocking too. I like that scene, but although it is pretty brutal. This is one thing I never mentioned about the prequel trilogy. They brought up this whole prophecy that Anakin was supposed to be this chosen one who would bring balance to the Force, which is a little hokey. I can understand, because prophecies are always very tired and basic trope of fantasy sci-fi stories. And yeah, I can understand that being a problem for people, but what I do like is what they do with it. Like, they said, we don't ever hear it from the original trilogy, but I like it that this is setting up Anakin to be this hero that will save the universe. What the prophecy never says is that Anakin will actually turn, and that he will save the universe, but he'll cause a lot of devastation to it too before he brings balance to the Force. I really like that twist of fate. That's a really neat touch that I like. I have some. What other notes should I have? I feel like went through most of what I like about this movie. And yeah, I remember getting teary-eyed at the ending of the movie where, oh, I forgot to mention, once Anakin turns into Darth Vader, there is a little bit of cheesiness to that, where he finds out that Padme ends up dying, even though even no matter how much he tried to save her, Padme still dies in childbirth. And when he finds that out, he just screams out, "No!" Like, no! That, I will admit, that is pretty cheesy. It doesn't bother me too much, but it is a little cheesy. One thing but I feel like the cheesier part is, bear with me, I feel like it's a little goofy that Anakin, as soon as he gets that armor put on, his voice instantly transforms from Hayden Christensen's to James Earl Jones. And while I'm not going to say that they should have put Hayden Christensen's voice underneath the mask. That would have been blasphemy to have any other voice coming out of that mask outside of James Earl Jones. But I feel like it's cheesy that he instantly turns into that deep, booming voice. I feel like it makes sense for him to grow into it like decades after the fact that he became Darth Vader. But it still feels a little cheesy that they put that in there. But I still like the scene where where Anakin fully turns into Darth Vader. I really do like the ending where they separate the babies and sending baby Leia and baby Luke off to different places so that they can be raised in secret, so that they can one day bring balance to the Force and stop the Empire from their tyrannical rule. I really like the ending where Uncle Owen and what are they named? Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen hold baby Luke and look out into the sunset, or maybe it's the sunrise, I don't know. Looking out as the twin suns are coming, and it plays the familiar theme. I always feel like that's a great way of wrapping up this trilogy. Overall, I really like the Revenge of the Sith. I feel like it gets too much of a bad rap just because it's connected to the prequel trilogy. It is a fantastic movie, even though it has some flaws. And I feel like the visuals are still a little bit dated, but I think they did a lot better job in this one than they did with Attack of the Clones. It looked really good, despite it standing out a little bit too much. What other flaws? Holding up my notes here, as you can see right here. I've said most of what I have. Oh yeah, there's one tiny flaw. They also bring in Chewbacca into this film. Yoda's on the planet of Kashyyyk to help that part of the Clone Wars, and they bring in Chewbacca in there. He doesn't really do much. There's really no reason for him to be there, so that's just a little nitpick I have. So yeah, Revenge of the Sith, I think, stands toe-to-toe with all of the with episodes 4, 5, and 6. It is a fantastic movie, and I think it's a great way of wrapping up the prequel trilogy. And I'm glad I rewatched these movies. It was a lot of fun watching them, even if my opinions may have with the prequel trilogy in mind, I can't help but love them. Even kind of, well, they're part of my childhood, and I can't really take that away. There are some things in our childhoods that we really don't want to look back on. Like, for example, I used to watch stuff like Barney and Teletubbies. Those are stuff I don't really care. I do not have any interest in going back to because they're for children and they don't really hold up very well at all. But other things, I still have a very strong spot for it. Like the prequels, the Star Wars prequel trilogy. I can't take away how much I like them. Even though I acknowledge their faults now, I'm still glad they helped me grow. They really helped inspire me to make my own stories and to do my own things, because that's something that, even if you don't like the prequel trilogy, you can't deny that George Lucas still had a great creative vision for this. That's something that these new movies really can't do, because they're just so, at least with The Force Awakens, they were so stale and so repetitive. But these ones, even if they didn't work out too well, they still have very unique stories, and I feel like they do add to the original trilogy, in my opinion. If you watch them all from episode 1 to episode 6, I feel like you'll get a very good cohesive story that you can understand and follow very well. Even if it's a little spotty in places, it still works pretty well. Although there's one thing I should mention. I feel like if you're gonna show these to your kids, I think you should watch them from the original trilogy first, because if you watch the prequel trilogy and then go on to this originals, you're gonna rob them. You're gonna rob these kids of one of the greatest plot twists of all time. That being Darth Vader revealing his identity as Luke's father at the end of Empire Strikes Back, and that I feel is a giant shame if you watch it like that. You're gonna rob them of something that's so special for so many people. But yeah, I like the prequel trilogy. I think they add a lot to the universe, and they have their own unique stories that I think build up well and help get payoff. Yeah, they add to the original trilogy. I think that's just my opinion. And even if they don't hold up too well, I still have a lot of fun with them, and I can overlook the flaws of them. Even if you can't, that's perfectly fine. But I just love these movies. I'm certain to watch them many more times in the future. But I'm glad I watched these. It really helped me rediscover what I loved about these movies in the first place. And I wanted to do that because, boy, next I'm going to go into the Disney movies. And oh boy, that I am not looking forward to that. Boy. We'll see how that goes. Next time I'm going to watch The Force Awakens, and yeah, and then I'm going to watch The Last Jedi. I don't really care too much about watching Rogue One or Solo, a Star Wars story. I'm mostly just watching the numbered episodes. I might watch them at some point, but yeah, considering that The Rise of Skywalker comes out in just about, in less than 1 week from now, I feel like I should just watch episodes 7 and 8 and then maybe watch 9. I am very not looking forward to what's happening in 9. But yeah, we're in for a good ride with the next one, so that's my thoughts on The Revenge of the Sith. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you could follow me despite my rambling and my stuttering. So next time we're going to watch The Force Awakens, and we'll see how that goes. This is going to be fun. So catch you guys later. Bye.